Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to my former Senate colleague, Betty Montgomery. If I had a gavel, I would call this to order with a gavel, but they don't give me a gavel here in Bowling Green at my home. Thank you all for being on this virtual conference. This is a much different situation than we were, of course, last year when our state trustees conference was one of the largest, in fact, the largest, we believe, in state history. And we had about 300 people who gathered for 2 days of meetings and dialogue and conversation and relationship building. We certainly wish it could be that way again this year, but we are where we are with this pandemic, and we're working through it. But I just wanted to especially thank those of you who were able to make this call for your commitment to being trustees and being in higher education. We look forward to welcoming Governor Mike DeWine. I talked to the governor about a half hour ago, and he is still planning with his unbelievable schedule to join us. The lieutenant governor also is scheduled to join us in a few minutes. And we're also hoping to be able to I'm going to be conducting a Q&A session and a listening session with you. But also the governor may have time. We're trying to make it work that he may have some time for some questions as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the bottom line is you sacrifice an awful lot as trustees to help govern our boards, to help make policy in Ohio, and really to help manage budgets, especially in these very difficult times. My brief opening remark was just to think about this. And I saw this on social media the other day where someone said that 2020 is the year where we don't receive everything we want, but perhaps we appreciate even more so everything we have. And I just want you to know how much I've appreciated the last 2 years serving as chancellor and getting to know the 37 public 2-year and 4-year universities and colleges throughout the state, to talk with the trustees on your campuses, and to serve. During this pandemic, we've learned that a college degree or a credential is even more important than ever before. Those without a degree or credential have seen their wages go down, have been more likely to be unemployed. And we just know that the prospects for our state are so much stronger if we have an educated, highly attainment education population, the people of the state. So we know that we also can't do this with just high school students, graduates. We must work with the underemployed. We must work with adult learners who want to come back onto a college campus or into a tech center or a community college or a technical college, or adult career centers. All of this is necessary to do the best we can for our great state. So thank you for being a part of that. Thank you for your efforts to make Ohio as strong as possible. I want to say something right from the beginning. I'm in Bowling Green. I have tech people actually in other places in the country and in Columbus. I have not done a Zoom call of this nature, of this magnitude in my life. Hopefully it all works well. We'll do our best. But for the next few minutes, I want to share some photos with you. These were photos. In 2019, I conducted more than 100 campus visits, 74 different campuses all over the state. And this is so much different this year. I've been just to a few places. So I'm going to share with you a few photos, some of them pre-COVID, and some other photos showing you how things have changed since last March. So if we'll start the photos, and we'll see how this goes today. But first of all, the first one was really an enjoyable time when I was able to join the Owens volleyball team and join my successor, Teresa Gavarone, Senator, in the Ohio Senate chambers, as the Owens Community College volleyball team won a second straight national junior college championship. So I was able to return to the Senate floor where I had served for 13 years and provided each player with their national championship rings. So it was a great experience. In February, I was excited to celebrate our RAPIDS program. This stands for Regionally Aligned Priorities in Delivering Skills. and many of you know about this program. Governor DeWine and Lieutenant Governor Husted joined us. This was at the Central Ohio Technical College's Knox County campus, where we learned more about how important the Rapids program is. And in this photo, I'm joined by not only the governor and lieutenant governor, but also by State Representative Rick Parfania and COT President John Barry. So thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us that day. Next photo is at the Choose Ohio First Conference last year, earlier this year, where it's always great to meet with students, to learn from them. And this photo highlights really our marquee program, the Choose Ohio First Scholarship Program, which supports students in the STEM fields. Since last October's Trustees Conference, we've actually had 2 RFPs go out. A total of $41 million over the next 5 years will be provided to students in new scholarship STEM programs. And we have a special emphasis on computer science degrees and credentials as part of this program. The next photo actually is kind of a historic one, because this was the last photo that was when we were really together. The last photo, this is March 6th of this year at the University of Cincinnati's Innovation Hub, with the governor and lieutenant governor kind of waiting for their turns to speak. And I'll always remember this because we really didn't have the full awareness of the coronavirus at that time. We were beginning, as I recall, to do a little fist bumping and elbow bumping, but we really didn't have all the same precautions. No masks, I don't think, that day. But Ohio soon, the very next week, became one of the first states to really aggressively respond to the growing pandemic. Next one was an enjoyable time in the middle of the summer. This was in July. One of my very few campus visits. I was invited by Marian Technical College's President Ryan McCall to attend Marian Tech's graduation ceremony, outside commencement drive-through ceremony. We handed out diplomas in the hot sun with masks intact, but also the college faculty and the staff came and along the side of the driveway and also congratulated the students on their graduation. So that was a special day. The next photo is in Lima, an even hotter day, as I recall, in Lima, and we visited Rose State College to support the partnership between Rose State and local healthcare leaders. Here I had the privilege of joining President Cynthia Spears for inviting me. Thank you, President. And Senate Majority Floor Leader Matt Huffman, who will be the next Senate President. And we signed the last beam that was added to the construction of the Center for Health Science, Education, and Innovation. Rhodes is an important educator of frontline healthcare workers in Ohio, so it was great to be there at the end of August to participate in that milestone event. This next photo, someone you probably recognize. This is someone who helped us encourage people in Ohio to take the pandemic seriously, to be part of our team, to be part of the game plan, and was part of our media campaign to spread the message. President Jim Tressel has been known for years to wear sweater vests, sometimes on the sidelines, but I believe we can all see that this sweater vest has Youngstown State on it. So President Tressel, thank you for doing that. You've been a student-focused college leader, and we thank you for being part of the message that we're all in this together. The next slide should be the presidents. New presidents in 2020. I believe we've welcomed 5 new presidents from colleges, universities, and all across the state. And so they are just briefly Interim President Bill Balzer of Owens Community College. Talked to President Balzer just yesterday. President Michael Gagan of Eastern Gateway Community College. President Christina Johnson of Ohio State University. Interim President Greg Postal of the University of Toledo. And President Jack Thomas at Central State University. So these presidents have already been engaged in leading their institutions and working with us. And I want to also recognize and thank Jack Hershey and Tom Walsh of the Association of Community Colleges, and Bruce Johnson and Mike Suver with the Inter-University Council of Ohio we work very closely with them to elevate higher education in Ohio, and we appreciate their leadership as well. Last thing I want to do briefly is just share Ohio Department of Higher Education senior staff. I want to thank them. Even though we have 25% fewer employees today than we did 10 years ago, we have a very dedicated and talented team, and I'm pleased to work with. I believe our department, our staff, is second to none in state government. So our leadership team, Senior Vice Chancellor Gary Cates, Senior Vice Chancellor Mike Duffy, Vice Chancellor for External Affairs and Education Technology, Charles C., Vice Chancellor for Finance and Data Management, Fred Church, Vice Chancellor for Higher Education Workforce Alignment, Sherry Rice, Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Stephanie Davidson, who most of you now know is retiring at the end of this year, and she will be greatly missed. Thank you, Dr. Davidson, for your great work over the years. And to Jim Bennett, my Chief of Staff and my Senior Policy Advisor. Thank you all for your service. I'm going to provide, in a few minutes here, just a few highlights of this last year. I want to start out by just talking about COVID, the coronavirus relief that has been provided, and even more important, what you've done, what your presidents have done, what your faculty has done, what the trustees have done in managing through this crisis. You've made your campuses as safe as possible through de-densifying the campus for online learning and hybrid instruction, supporting students, the health of students and faculty and the public. National reports show that Ohio is number 2 in the entire nation in state discretionary fund support for colleges and universities. These are dollars that came from the federal government, and then the governor and the legislature and the department decided to allocate funds. Number 2 in the nation, and that's in part because we have such a strong relationship with our colleges and universities throughout the state. What did you do when this thing happened? One community college opened a food bank or maintained a food bank to provide for students to guard against food insecurity. Another community college president provided Chromebooks immediately to students so they could stay on track. Our universities kept their dorms open for those few students who didn't have a safe place to go. Many of those some of those were former foster care youth. You took care of them. You provided them a safe place to continue their education. So there's so many heroic efforts and stories. From the state of Ohio, we wrote checks. We provided tens of thousands of free COVID tests. We provided 1 million masks and supplied those to help meet the needs of 2020. But many of you certainly did so much to help us out, and we appreciate that so much. Last year, the governor issued a call to have graduate tuition at in-state rates at all of our 13 qualified eligible undergraduate institutions. All of you did that. Ohio has become an import state. We have more students coming to Ohio than we do leaving our state. And it's in part because of our value, our quality, and because you have done things and been willing to work to make sure that we retain and that we attract talent into our state. This is helpful to our state. Thank you for doing that. We didn't do this with a mandate. We didn't do this with a change in the revised code, but we did this because of your positive response. So thank you very much. I know the governor appreciates your response to that as well. In addition, we have all 13 of our undergraduate institutions on the 4-year public side are part of our Ohio tuition guarantee, locking in tuition at 4 or 5 years for students who start out their freshman year on your campus. That provides predictability, stability, helps with our affordability message, and it's the strongest tuition guarantee program, statewide program of any state in the country. So thank you for helping meet the needs of students with that program. This next issue is from the controlling board. I'm not going to say too much about it. Many of the presidents already know, but we received $22.6 million just yesterday from the state controlling board. The state of Ohio granted. So what we've done is we've provided $12 million to help with broadband issues, to increase from 1 to 10 gigabytes for every campus that wasn't already there. So $12 million in savings there. $2.5 million for Ohio Link, the library that provides curricula assistance for campuses all over Ohio. So we provide that additionally for our campuses. The pandemic has caused reductions in enrollment and some students not applying or enrolling or filling out their FAFSA forms. So we provide $3.5 million for FAFSA completion efforts to advocate for higher education across the state, to make sure students and our colleges are fully aware of our transfer program, our academic credit transfer program, which is one of the strongest in the country, but additional dollars there to help make sure students complete that FAFSA and get the federal aid that they need, and to be able to attain and to afford a college education. The final thing we did, was a priority of the Ohio Association of Community Colleges, was to provide $4.5 million to make sure that we're doing all we can so that students take co-requisite coursework instead of developmental coursework, so that they can be a stronger student, so that they have a better chance to attain a degree, to persist and stay in school. And so we provided dollars to help make that work. This was all part of some GEAR funding, a Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. There may be some additional dollars. The governor may touch on this later. Maybe some additional federal dollars coming in GEAR funds. And if so, we may be able to provide some more assistance in some of these areas. In terms of tech cred, the Lieutenant Governor will speak to this a little bit, but this is a program that allows employers to receive some support to upskill and retrain and support currently employed Ohioans. What a tremendous year we've had in tech cred. 31 of our 36 public colleges, universities are part of this. 5 are not at this time. So my question is out there to you, who's next? Who wants to join tech cred and be part of this exciting program? We hope you will. The state capital budget is just being debated in the General Assembly this week. We expect it to pass. $452 million for higher education, specifically in the bill, and a new program, first ever statewide, $5 million for a safety and security grant program that will be worked on with the Ohio Department of Public Safety. So look for that. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. The General Assembly respectfully must pass this, and the governor signed the bill, but we're optimistic that that might happen before the end of this week. College Credit Plus is another program that's important to us. Thank you all for being a part of that. We actually increased College Credit Plus enrollments this fall, and thank you for all of you who are part of that, and we want to elevate that and provide more flexibility during this pandemic to do that. We have other student-focused priorities, but let me just say that our priorities are about students. In the last budget, we increased funding for every type of scholarship and every type of need-based financial aid program we could. We pledged to strive to do that, even with a tough budget. We strive to do that with need-based financial aid, with our Choose Ohio First program, with National Guard Scholarship Program, and with our War Orphan Scholarship. We may not be able to provide the kind of increases we ideally would like in a very tough pandemic challenged state budget with revenues challenged, but we're going to do the best we can because students come first. And so thank you all for being a part of that. Next, I'm hopeful by now that Lieutenant Governor Husted is joining us. Lieutenant Governor, are you with us?
I'm here.
Well, Lieutenant Governor, I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'd like to take another 40 seconds and tell them a little bit about what I know about Jon Husted. Really appreciate, Lieutenant Governor, you being with us today. I know you meet with the governor probably every hour, not every day, to work on meeting the challenges of this. Yeah, exactly. I did as well about an hour ago, and hopefully he'll be following you in about 10 minutes or so. But, you know, Lieutenant Governor helps lead specifically our workforce preparation efforts in this state. He's the director of what we call Innovate Ohio, and there's no one that understands the power of innovation and workforce preparation than Jon Husted. He's just number one in our state. And so he knows that innovative technology embedded strategies are really important if we're going to do our best for our state and our future. And I worked with the Lieutenant Governor when he was Speaker of the House, and he was actually the champion, actually the sponsor of originally of the Choose Ohio First Scholarship Program. So that kind of shows that he's got a vision for the future, because we know how important STEM education is. And the final thing I'll say, and some of you have heard me say this before, but As you can tell, if you look behind me in my office, I kind of follow sports a little bit, but Jon Husted is a winner, not only in state government and supporting policies that win for Ohio, but he was a All-American defensive back at the University of Dayton for the national champion Flyers back in the day. And now we have him part of the governor's team winning in another way so that Ohio can win the future. So with that, please welcome Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted to the conference. Lieutenant Governor, great to see you.
Thank you, Chancellor. I appreciate it. I was noticing that Cleveland Browns banner in the background in your office. My heart was ripped out last night when those Ravens. Right. They also stole an hour of sleep from me that I otherwise didn't get. So it was.
I as well, sir.
It's great to be with everybody today. Earlier this morning, I was at Riverside Hospital watching the vaccine come in and talking with the medical professionals there. And as we've seen these vaccines roll out in the last couple of days, it's reminded me that it all starts with education. The scientists and the people who develop these vaccines in record time, many of them were educated at American universities. They have their science backgrounds that started in our K through 12 system and our university system. And back in 2005 and 2007, when I started to work on things like the Choose Ohio Scholarship, Choose Ohio First Scholarship, and the STEM school system that we now have, no one knew what STEM was. No one was kind of paying attention to these things. And if we've learned, as we're going through this pandemic, I always reflect on the fact that it's investments in people, investments in research and development over the recent course of history that's enabled us to be prepared for this moment and preparing people for this moment that can save millions of lives. I was reading something this morning that every day that we went without a vaccine globally, 14,000 people died. And this is not only going to save lives, it is going to help us restore our lives to what we aspire for them to be. And that has come through education and science and research and development. And so Governor DeWine has been committed to this. If there is a reason to remind people about why this is so important, it's happening today as vaccines are landing in hospitals across this great country. And some of the ways that we can continue to contribute this is with the Choose Ohio First Scholarship. I want to emphasize again, when I conceived of this idea, it was because 80% of people went to work within 50 miles of where they graduate high school or where they went to college. If we can develop high school talent in STEM, we can keep that talent here to go to school, then we're going to have more talent in the workforce and in our state. And that's the concept behind it. We continue to grow it. During the course of this 2-year period, we made a major, investment, over $20 million awarded in December to the computer science Choose Ohio First component of this. Computer science being incredibly important to the success of everything. Computer science is in engineering. Computer science is in development of vaccines. It's all of these. It touches everything. And so we'll continue to push those initiatives, and hopefully with a cooperative economy and a cooperative legislature, we can continue to make more investments in that space. Tech cred. Governor and I set a goal with Tech cred to help 10,000 people in the first year gain access to industry recognized credentials in high demand occupations. we hit that goal, at least in terms of the opportunity. What I love about the program is that we don't spend tax dollars on anything until we get a completed outcome. It's a win-win in that the individual who earns the credential has more job security and earning power. It helps employers have the talent and skills that they need from their workforce to move things forward and to compete in a global economy. COVID has exacerbated this, but technology is going to continue to change the nature of work, and we have to help people gain access to it. Look, you know this. If you didn't come from an environment where maybe you got on the right track early enough to get the education that you otherwise would have hoped for, the idea of going back to college can be daunting. But if we can do it like this, where we help people earn an industry recognized credential, and that may also accumulate college credits, then they can begin to stack these things and begin to move their academic and economic lives forward, which has great societal and economic value. This is what I believe is the future for the rest. The traditional system will be the traditional system, but it's hard to grow that with the existing resources and models that we have. But things like tech cred and other programs to continue to educate our workforce, I think, are the future of growth in education and in the economy. And I'm a big fan of continuing to try to convince the legislature and others to buy into tech cred and the individual micro-credential assistant program, which we call IMAP, which is this partner. And then finally, let me just add something on ORNet. ORNet has been a great asset to Ohio. It made Ohio a digitally connected state through our public institutions, whether those are libraries, colleges, universities, and K through 12. But as we've learned, which we know, but COVID has exacerbated, you cannot participate in the modern economy, education system, or healthcare system, frankly, without that access. And we know that there are a lot of people, 1 million people approximately, who don't even have access to the federal definition of high-speed internet, let alone can afford it or have poor quality. We have a lot of people who are being left behind in the digital divide. Our institutions of higher education are critical in bridging that. We're worked very closely with Chancellor Gardner and the Ohio Department of Education and ORNet on partnering to establish that last mile enhancement program. We think that this is just another piece of the puzzle of trying to connect more people to the world and to the opportunities that are out there for people that don't have it. And then finally, for those of you who have been part of the Ohio IP Promise, I just want to say thank you. It really, I hope, will be an effort that will commercialize more of our intellectual property, that will attract more capital, that will attract more talent and improve people's lives. And I appreciate everybody who has been part of helping the IP Promise move forward. I think it's only the beginning of a great potential to continue to make Ohio the most innovative entrepreneurial state in the Midwest, to attract talent, to attract capital, to attract economic opportunity, so that we can be the hub in the Midwest for prosperity and opportunity. So that's my thoughts that I wanted to share with you today, my aspirations, and why I care so much about the things I'm investing my time and energies in, and why I'm asking for continued investment on that front. So thank you, Chancellor Gardner, and for all that you all do to innovate and educate. We appreciate all of you, and may all of you have a blessed holiday season, and may we all put 2020 behind us in the bad way and make 2021 the year of recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Husted, for your leadership, your partnership, and just really appreciate you also agreeing to take some time today in a really challenging, busy week for the the administration. So thanks again for being with us. It's now my honor to introduce the governor. Candidly, I'm not sure if the governor is on yet. We have a couple of minutes here to introduce him. What I want to say first of all, and some of you may have heard me say this before, but I've been involved in state government for about 35 years, and Governor DeWine is the best listener that I've ever known. And I have some additional evidence today to share with you. You're going to see a very brief video clip, about 90 seconds, of an exchange between Governor DeWine and Kevin Fiesel, who's a University of Akron student. This occurred in September. I hosted these virtual meetings called the Chancellor Student Roundtable. So we listened to students, college students from 56 different campuses all over Ohio. And Governor DeWine participated in one of those roundtables. And so we're going to show you this video clip. This is the dialogue that the governor had with Kevin Fiesel, student at the University of Akron.
My name's Kevin. I'm from the University of Akron. I just wanted to bring things to your attention that could do with some state help or state funding. One of them is mental health support services, and the other is food and housing insecurity. Those are, by and large, the top two concerns that our students are facing. Obviously, their education is extremely important to them, but they can't earn that education if they're worried about their mental wellness or whether they can eat or have a roof over their head. So those are just two things I wanted to bring to your attention.
Yeah, as far as the mental health, what kind of services has the university provided, or have you checked that out yet? That's one of the things that we talk with the universities about, talk to the presidents about, and we know that they're very concerned about that, even before the pandemic, and now with the pandemic and the virus, it just the mental health challenges are even more.
Yeah, currently we're offering 3 modalities: in-person, virtual, and also like work at your own pace, pretty much. But what's really concerning for us is there's very little funding for additional counselors. We're really running into long wait times for counseling, and students are having to get turned away or find another option in the area.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. It shouldn't be that way. So, thank you.
Let me just say that this governor, I have known as the best listener leader, as I say, and this was a great example of that. He took the time to listen to students at this roundtable, and he truly has been the most accessible, engaged governor in the country when it deals with college and education leaders and campuses. We actually have some pretty solid proof of that. I'm not just saying that as a member of the cabinet. And so when Kevin and other students raised the mental health and counseling services concern with him, literally a couple weeks later, the governor actually 2 days later asked me and Director Lori Chris of the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services to come up with a plan to work with him on developing a plan to help with this critical need. And literally 3 weeks later, checks were being written to your campuses, to your colleges and universities to help. And it was so enjoyable to write to the students back to them and say, never question whether students can make a difference in this state. You just did. And of course, Governor DeWine made a difference again. So Governor, we're really honored to have you. I know your schedule is unbelievable. Thank you for taking whatever time you're able to share with us today. And Governor, we talked before that perhaps you might even be able to take a question or two. And if you can, the only thing I'll share with people is that if you have a question, you'll need to go to the chat room on this video conference and send a personal chat question to Jim Bennett, my chief of staff. But with that, let me introduce the 70th governor of Ohio, a great partner working with us for the last 20 months, 22 months. And it's great to have you here with us, Governor. The Honorable Mike DeWine. Governor?
Oh, Chancellor, thank you very, very much. I appreciate that introduction, and it was good to see the clip again. It was kind of fun. You told me that we're one of only 2 states, I think, that have actually specifically taken money during this pandemic and set aside to our universities for mental health. So we're proud to be one of the two that has done this. And it did come about through that exchange and other exchanges that we had with students and we had with college presidents, university presidents, that this mental health issue, which is always a big issue, but it's even a bigger issue during the pandemic. I want to thank you, Chancellor, for the great job you're doing. Lieutenant Governor outlined, I think, some of the things that we really care about aspirationally. Some of the things that we're doing and that we're going to continue to do, despite the pandemic. Let me first, though, start off by thanking all of you. Being a trustee, being on the board is not an easy job. And having engaged trustees who take that job seriously is just so very important. So thank you very, very much. I mean, we can see the difference in universities when the boards are really, really engaged, and occasionally when maybe not as engaged. So it matters a lot. And as we look to the future of the state of Ohio, there's nothing more important, obviously, than education, whether it's K through 12 or whether it's higher education. And we are blessed with some great colleges and universities, both public and private, in Ohio that really make a difference. I also want to thank you for setting the policy. We talked about this last year about, we had an idea that it might be something to keep more students in Ohio by saying that anybody who's a graduate, who has graduated undergrad in Ohio, they may have been from out of state, but they come into Ohio, they stay here 4 years, 5 years, whatever it takes, they graduate undergrad, and then, if they want to apply to a state school for graduate, for that state school to treat them for tuition purposes as an in-state student. I believe every school is now doing that. So I want to thank you for that. We just looked at this as an opportunity to capture more students and keep them here. The longer we can keep them here, the more likely they are to stay. And that is really the firepower of some of the firepower of the state is our universities and our colleges and attracting people in. As you know, we're a net importer. We have a lot more kids coming in from other states to go to school here than we have sending out to other states. And so we've got to continue to leverage that, and make that work better, frankly, for us. Let me talk a little bit about the pandemic. First of all, thank you and the presidents and everyone involved. I think all of you are now either remote or done. And, the idea of going home at Thanksgiving and not coming back from a public health point of view made a lot of sense. And so I thank you for doing that. Let me give you kind of an outline of what we see coming as far as the pandemic, because the pandemic does continue to directly impact you and your students and your faculty. Today and yesterday have been very good days. Today, Fran and I were at Springfield, the Mercy Hospital, and saw the vaccine unloaded, 975 doses. They're going to do, I think, 100 today. 8 other hospitals around the state are getting it today, and we'll start either today or tomorrow. 2 got it yesterday. And this is just the beginning. The goal is to really focus on our healthcare providers, people who are risking their lives, literally out there dealing with COVID patients every day. We want to protect them. It's important. It's the right thing to do. We owe it to them. And it's also important, frankly, so they can continue to work and continue to protect the rest of us. In addition to that, we will start on Friday into our nursing homes. And our nursing homes, again, have the most vulnerable people. Over half of the deaths that have occurred in Ohio have occurred from people who were in nursing homes. So to keep the number of people down in the hospitals, to save lives, going in that direction and vaccinating 350,000 people who are either work or live in nursing homes is something that's very, very important. That's the good news, that we've started down that pathway. The bad news is that we are at record high numbers of cases. There is not a county, none of your schools every single one of your schools exists, lives in an environment where there's at least 3 times in your county, in your community, 3 times the spread of COVID that the CDC considers high. And that's the lowest. We have some counties that are 12 and 13 times the high incidence. So at no time during this pandemic has your school been surrounded by a community. I like to say, you're swimming in an ocean. You're swimming in an ocean that now is just boiling with cases. So when your students come back, they're going to come back to an environment that is different, where everybody in that community, the rate is just much higher than it's ever been before. So I think, understanding that is going to be important. All the schools have been doing some testing. Quite candidly, you're going to have to do a lot more testing to be able to stay in school. I think the schools, just like K through 12, have done a great job. I think our colleges and universities have done a phenomenal job in the classroom, keeping the spread down. Very little spread. Everyone's wearing a mask. Everyone is focused on it. But where we have seen the spread, and I know you've seen the spread on your campuses, is off-campus housing. Students who are not directly in the dormitories, but are just there. And that parallels, frankly, what we're seeing from those who are not students. In the workplace, pretty safe. School, pretty safe. But it's what people do in their private lives that really is what's driving a great deal of this pandemic. So we put out last week, 12 things, 12 protocols, and we just ask every Ohioan to follow. Let me just mention a couple of them. One is, and these are things that I think people, really don't necessarily think about, because we think we need a mask on when we're around strangers, but we don't think we need a mask on when we're around friends. And that's, it's just equally as important. So one of the strong recommendations from the doctors and the health professionals is don't eat with anybody that you don't live with. And that's, you can't sit there and eat and wear a mask. So, that's number one. Number two, people just have to assume that everybody's got COVID. And people who are dealing with you need to assume you have COVID. We have some counties in the state, 30 counties in the state right now, that are over 10 times the positivity rate. The positivity rate is per 100,000 population. I won't give you all the math, but 30 counties, in those counties, 1 out of every 100 people in the last 2 weeks, just in the last 2 weeks, have been tested positive for the COVID. So it's a very different world that you're coming back into. I think colleges have done a good job, universities have done a good job, but it's going to be much more difficult when these kids come back in January. Much higher spread that you see out there. So we've got really, I think, a very tough winter. And the people who are most at risk are your professors, your cafeteria workers, anybody who's older, anybody who has any medical problems. Your students who are at the most risk, of course, are those students who have some medical problems. And so those are the people that you need to really worry about protecting in this very high spread level. Some of you have worked with the local health departments in regard to tracing. I would just tell you that since the time your students went home for Thanksgiving, these health departments are even more overwhelmed, and they're going to probably need more help from you in regard to the tracing. Some schools are working very closely. Some schools have some of their students doing the tracing. I think that's great. You need to work that out with your local health department, but they are much more overwhelmed, will be much more overwhelmed when your students come back than they were when your students went away. And you need to understand that and to know that. Capital budget. I am told by the Senate and the House that there will be a capital budget. So we've been working with them. Capital budgets are this rare thing that are actually agreed to before they're introduced. And so we've been working with the Senate President, Larry Obhoff, with Speaker Cupp, to get together a capital bill. And of course, we have your requests in there. So we expect that capital bill to be passed maybe as early as this week. And so things are looking good. I can't guarantee anything, but it certainly looks like things are looking, very, very good in regard to the capital bill. So those just a few things. I wanted to be able to talk with you about, and I'm more than happy to kind of open it up for your questions or your comments. Again, I really appreciate the fact that the Chancellor is staying in touch with the President, staying in touch with you all. We are pretty good listeners, our administration. That's how we learn. And we don't get everything right, but we want to continue to listen to the people who are on the front lines. And what you're doing as the trustees are just vitally, vitally important, what your presidents are doing. And I appreciate that very, very much. So, Randy, we'll just sort of open up for questions.
Governor, thank you very much for that. The very first cabinet meeting, sir, you told the cabinet, we're going to listen to the people of the state of Ohio, but we're not going to use listening as an excuse not to act with a sense of urgency. I think that's a direct quote, sir. I don't forget that any day because I work for you. And so thank you for that. And thank you for your own sense of urgency and helping us being one of the best in the country and responding to the needs of college universities in our state. As I mentioned before, trustees and presidents and leaders, please contact Jim Bennett in the chat room with a specific question if you have it. I know one or two, I'm told one or two came in actually while the governor was speaking. So please do that and we'll try. I know the governor has another hard stop here pretty soon, but go ahead and Jim Bennett, if you have the first couple of questions have come in, if you want to share that with the governor, please.
Sure. Good morning, Governor.
Hey, Jim.
Got a couple of questions here that we've received thus far. The first one, sir, is what are you hearing about the prospects for additional COVID relief coming out of Washington?
Stay tuned. Keep watching TV. Listen to the radio. I've been in contact with our two senators, and we still hope that there will be a bill of some sort. But I think that if there's not a bill before, I think even if there is a bill in this lame duck session, I think there'll probably be another bill that Congress will work on after the first of the year. So some of the decisions that we're having to make as we look at what's left of our CARES Act dollars, frankly, we're waiting to see what the federal government's going to do. Can we carry those dollars over? Senator Portman, Senator Brown have told me that any bill that's moving will have that in it, and they're pretty confident that carryover ability is going to be in there. But we still don't know that for sure. What additional dollars will there be there? So as we look at your needs, as we look at local health departments' needs, as we look at the testing, the tracing, all of these things, trying to get some relief to businesses, I wouldn't say we're on hold, but we're kind of waiting till we see, what the federal government is going to do. So the answer is, I don't know. But I made it very clear, and I think other governors have, the importance of these dollars.
Thank you.
Jim.
Got a question from one of our student trustees who's curious what advice you have for student trustees who are passionate about higher education and want to find additional ways to get involved.
Yeah, look, first of all, being a trustee is like a graduate course or graduate education. Just sitting there, I've been a trustee. I've been a trustee at a private school when my daughter went to school. I've also been a trustee at Central State many, many years ago. And so just literally being on that board, you should be very honored and use that as an opportunity to learn. You will learn a lot. I know I did when I was a trustee. And, the challenges that higher education faces are obvious. We have a pandemic. Your enrollment's down. Most of your enrollment is down. The two-year colleges, our community colleges enrollment is even down further. And so these are challenges. The demographics are not great. We're seeing, a dip in the population that is graduating, and that's going to carry on for a while. So, fewer students potentially. And so I think the challenge that we all have and that you have, both for being a trustee, but also being someone who is trying to help the state, is for us to figure out how we reach out and recruit and then retain maybe some more non-traditional students that we have missed in the past, students who maybe are older, and giving them the opportunity to get that education, whether it's remotely, whether it's in class, whether it's a combination. I think that is the challenges. And I know each and every one of you are looking at those challenges. What is unique about your school? What's your niche? What can you provide? And constantly trying to adapt to what the needs are of the incoming students. I think looking at these students as customers and their parents as customers is probably the best way to look at it. You got to meet the customer's needs. You got to keep your standards up. You got to do all the things you need to do, but you also have to meet those customers' needs of what will help them move forward in life. So good luck.
Thank you, Governor. Next question is about vaccine, and just a question about how the administration will allocate the vaccine across the state and where our higher education stakeholders, including professors, might fall into that allocation prioritization.
Well, we're now in 1A. 1A is a big group. As I said, it's probably about 350,000 people who either work in nursing homes or reside in nursing homes. It's a much higher number of our medical personnel. So there's a pretty good consensus across the country in regard to these two groups of people. I think every state has put these two groups of people in their first group. It will take us a while to get through that first group. For example, we're going to get, we think, 660,000 doses in the month of December. We think it'll be roughly the same in the month of January. That will not get us through the 1A group. Now, the 1A group also includes other people, includes people like those who are in EMS. So, for example, on your college campus, if you've got EMS people, they're going to, they will be included, and they should be included. Where we go from 1A is still very much up in the air, and there's different ways of looking at this. There's some people that want to look at it from the essential worker point of view. You get into some interesting questions. Who are essential workers? You can also look at it from the point of view of how do you save the most lives? And how do you vaccinate those who are the most vulnerable? And so, there's just two fundamentally kind of different ways of looking at that. And then there's kind of combinations of those. So I don't think you can, students are not going to be very high in that list, because as we know, unless they have a medical problem, they are not at a very high risk. The risk is, of course, they can be very efficient spreaders, and we know that. And so that is the risk, and that's what we all have to try to balance as we go through this. But I don't think that you're going to see students, and I don't think you should plan on seeing students very high. At some point, I think your employees, if they fit into other categories, age maybe, will be getting that vaccine. So, there's many ways of looking at it. You could make a case. You could make a case, I think, that professors and those who work at colleges directly interfacing with students, whether it is someone who is cleaning the dormitory or whoever it is, they could be at pretty high risk because these students can be obviously carriers, and it may be at a high level. So again, these are things that have not been decided. I want to make that very clear. The 2 group has not been decided, but these are some considerations and some things I think that people will be talking about. But the first group, I think there's a pretty broad consensus. When we get to that second group, people are going to be all over the place. And I can just tell you by the number of groups that have called us and said very understandably, look, our people are at a high risk. You need to cover them next. The problem is we in this country are not used to dealing with the scarcity of healthcare. And we have a scarcity today of the vaccine. Thank God we have it, but it's still a scarce commodity. Now, what we hope happens is that 660,000 this month and next month starts going out like that as we get beyond Moderna and beyond Pfizer and into the other drug companies that we hope will be coming on in January and maybe February. And so that numbers are going to continue, we hope at least, will continue to go out. I don't know when we get the general population where just anybody can go to their doctor or go to their health department and get a shot. You know, is that April? Is it May? Is it June? I don't know, but it's going to be a while.
And Governor, this is Randy. Your senior technology is something else. I'm getting so many messages. I'm being told you have time for one more question, sir. Okay. Your senior staff is telling me that, as I know I'll be on a call with you in another half hour. But Jim, if there's another question or something to raise with the governor, that would be great. Thank you.
Sir, the last question that I've got in the queue here is, you know, as our colleges and universities look to the future in spring semester, what guidance do you have for them so that they can continue bending the curve and providing safe on-campus instruction?
Yeah, I mean, you know, my thoughts are pretty much what I said. And that is, I truly believe that it's going to be tougher. I hate to tell you this, but it's going to be tougher in January than it was in September. It's going to be better because you know better what to do. You've been through it. You've been through the war, but the rate is much higher. These kids are going to be coming back, you know, unless they're coming from Hawaii or someplace. They're coming back from a state that almost in every case is higher rate than it was before. They're coming to a state in Ohio if they're from Ohio, or if they're coming back to go to school in Ohio. They're coming to a state that is much higher than we've ever had it before. So, just as we've said to our K through 12, and we've tried to explain to people, keeping this spread down in your community is vitally important to keeping your kids K through 12 in school. It's vitally important to keep your nursing homes safe. It's vitally important to keep your hospitals not being overrun, because we all swim in the same ocean. And if you're in Greene County or you're in Clark County, where Fran and I were this morning, or whatever county you're in, the thing you need to look at, the best indicator of what's going on in your county is the data that we put up every single day, which tells you the rate of spread in your county in the last 2 weeks. And everybody's red hot. Some are much, much hotter than others, but everybody's red hot. So you're going to have to test more. You're going to have to do more of everything that you have done in the past. And it's going to be it's a real challenge. So it's the reality. I hate to tell you that, but it's going to be tougher. It really is. But you all have done a good job, and I'd ask for your support for the presidents and for their teams, because they've got a very awesome task ahead of them as we move forward. The good news is this time next year, we hope to be well out of this and have it in our rearview mirror. Just to kind of walk you through it, if you get 660,000 people this month, that means those people in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on what vaccination they got, are going to get the second shot. And so once you hit that date, which will be mid-January, every day after that, we're going to have more people in this state with immunity. And we're just going to continue to drive those numbers up. It's going to take a while, but we're headed towards the light. We're headed towards the finish of this. When the average person can get it, I don't think we know. June, maybe, I don't know. I hope it's sooner than that, but it's coming. And so by the time you get to next fall, it's going to be a very different world. I'm not going to say we won't have challenges next fall, because this virus continues to throw us curveballs and spitballs and everything else. But next fall should be a lot better. But we got to get through this next semester. So thanks, Randy. Thanks, everybody.
Well, Governor, thank you so much for your time and your leadership. We really appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much. Well, I think you get a sense there from what I see almost every day. The listening capacity, the taking things in, the thoughtfulness, at a time when people are frustrated a little bit with government. It's been a real privilege to work with Mike DeWine. So really glad he could do that. We weren't sure even as late as this morning, mid-morning, whether that would work, and we're certainly glad it did. We have another 27 minutes or so, depending on how long you want to share with us. But this part of the program is basically a Q&A, an input session. The same format we'll try to utilize that we did with the governor to send a personal email or a message chat to Jim Bennett on this call. If you do that, we will try to get to that question. And also to say this, the chat, what I love about this kind of format is it gives us an opportunity to keep a record of every question or every comment that was made. So afterwards, I will read every single chat, every question. We'll try to respond, or our staff will try to respond directly to all of you, whether it's in the next 27 minutes, probably not all of you, but we will do our best, and we will read every one, and we will try to respond to every question or comment or suggestion that you might provide to us. That's how we strive to do our job. So, but with that, terrific turnout today, so we'll do our best. And Jim, my guess is you probably have a question or two by now, and if you don't, then I'm going to wonder that everything must be perfect out there in Ohio. But go ahead, Jim. If you have any feedback yet, please let me know.
They're just starting to come in, Chancellor, and I'll kind of echo what you said, which is to everybody, I'll do my absolute best to keep all these organized as they come in and to provide them to the Chancellor in order. So, Chancellor, the first one that came in here is, what can you tell us about what we might experience in the next state operating budget? Do you have anything you can share with trustees on that note?
Well, what I'd like to say is, can we get Governor DeWine back on the conference? He might be able to share more. Ultimately, here's what's great is we get several months to be an advocate, to raise issues with the governor and the Office of Budget and Management. And then at the end of the day, eventually the governor will decide. So anything that happens in the budget, the governor gets the credit for, the governor elevates. But I can share you a couple things. Number one, even though we're doing the best we can on the budget, we know that tax revenues, sales tax, income tax, they're actually doing okay versus where we thought we might be, but they're still down, and the budget is likely not to be one where we see a lot of increases. Some people are speculating that it might be generally a flat funded type of budget situation. Now, candidly, if we get significant additional federal support, I think we can weather this storm. That's what the federal programs are meant to do. But we will try. And the one thing I can almost say with certainty, because I know this governor and I know what his attitude is about students, is that the programs like Choose Ohio First, like need-based financial aid, War Orphan Scholarship, National Guard Scholarship, those things that directly affect students, we know that I believe those will be funded, that no student currently involved in those programs will lose a dime. And in fact, I'm pretty confident that our need-based financial aid is actually going to go up. And Choose Ohio First, I'm pretty confident. We've already been, as I said earlier in the conversation, we increased our funding for Choose Ohio First, even as the state had to make budget reductions. We still were able to get another RFP out there. And by the way, the feedback we've gotten already, the responses we've gotten already have been maybe the largest we've ever seen in Choose Ohio First. So you can tell people are really buying in. So thank you for that. We're going to do our best. I don't look for it to be the largest increase in state history, to be sure. But if we can match student priorities with some additional federal support, I think we can still have a pretty strong higher education presence in the next state budget. I hope that's a satisfactory answer for now. But that, by the way, the budget will come out a little earlier in the middle of an incumbent governor's term. Last time it was March 15th. This year, the budget will be announced on or about February 1. So we are still working with the budget director and the governor on the proposals. But we'll know a little bit earlier this year, at least what the governor's proposal is. Fair question, though. Fair question.
Okay, thank you, Chancellor. Next question. What are you most concerned about with respect to the short and longer term impacts of COVID, and how can our colleges and universities help?
Wow, talk about a on-point question. Actually, some of the things we did in controlling board that I kind of ran through pretty quickly, the things that the community colleges especially have shared with us about enrollments are down a little bit and FAFSA completions are down. And that's true of both the 4-year and the 2-year. The kinds of students that we want to really work with, provide wraparound services, provide some additional assistance so that they can stay in college and so that they can get their degree, that may come from socioeconomic challenged families. Those are the ones especially impacted. The gap between those students and others has widened a little bit. And that's why we decided to invest in the FAFSA program. And this isn't mainly on the colleges. This is also with high schools and working with counselors in the high schools to make sure they're doing everything they can to get FAFSA completions done. So there are things like that we definitely need to do. The OACC's co-requisite developmental ed suggestion is really impactful for students in underrepresented populations. I think that's important and pretty remarkable that we're able to take care of a budget challenge. That was going to be a budget challenge for us, and we're able to put $4.5 million into that program. I think that was very helpful. So there are things like that I think we can do specifically. And then it's just, as the governor said, it's doing everything we can for the health and safety of our students in the next 6, perhaps to 9 months or so. I think you could tell the governor was very pleased that we've worked so hard at keeping our campuses as safe as possible. But he's always looking for, the next step, the next month. So I think those are the things. But, at the end of the day, I've actually had a chance to look at kind of some up-to-date economic reports. And believe it or not, the last report I saw showed that those in the higher wage groups, those more likely to have college degrees, actually saw their wages increase in 2020, even during this pandemic. And those with just a high school education or those with some college but didn't get a degree or credential, they actually were much more likely to be unemployed and lost wages. So I think it's a challenge in all this anxiety and uncertainty to still tell families, to still tell students, don't stop out, don't pause out. If you do, if we can do anything we can to help you, because the literature says that if you stop out or pause, you're likely not to come back. 1.5 million Ohioans who have some college but no degree. And we're working on that every day. But we can't allow, if we can help it, allow that gap to get wider. So we're working specifically with the college leaders every week really on this question. And there's going to be more to come here in the next few weeks in terms of how we wrestle with that. But it's important not only to your enrollment numbers and your bottom line, it's the right thing to do for families, the right thing to do for students. And quite frankly, if we don't, our state's economy is going to be impacted by our inability to keep people, quote, in the game. So we could talk for a long time. I'm looking at some of my college leader friends out there. I got to be careful not to name names because I've got 200 people plus on this call, but some of you have just done a great job. And even the one thing that I'm kind of impressed with, Jim, I'll just say that and I looked at these statistics just last night, but our preliminary head counts show that even with high school counselors not being able to advise and support students quite like they did because of the challenges of online counseling and online instruction, we were still able to increase marginally, but we were still able to increase our college credit plus enrollments, both at the community college, the four-year regional level, and the four-year main campus level. All three of them. At least that's the data that has come into us, and these are not our numbers. These are, and you can affirm this. These are reported to us by the campuses. This is self-reported by college campuses to us. So it's their information telling us what their enrollment levels are. So there are things we can do. We just have to work twice as hard.
Thank you, Chancellor. We've got a number of questions coming in here, so I'm going to just take them in order here.
I'll just do my best. This feels like state senate days when you're in a town hall and you just don't know what you're going to get.
That's right.
Go ahead.
So the next question, Chancellor, is there's a lot of forecasting that other industries are doing on the pandemic and how remote work might impact their long-term future. Do you have any thoughts on higher education institutions and whether they should be evaluating a reduction in their physical building footprint, for example, as we transition to more remote learning?
Wow, that's a challenging one. I think the answer is logically yes. Not that you have to change the entire dynamics, because I happen to be one who believes that in-person education is probably best for most students. And quite frankly, we just talked about the gap between underrepresented populations and those from socioeconomic challenged families. You know, they traditionally value and do better with in-person counseling, in-person instruction, on-campus learning. So I don't think we should ever believe that, in my view, this is my view, that we should think that online or virtual education should replace to a large degree what's happening on our campuses. I don't think that's really a net positive thing for higher education. But to ignore that there's going to be a higher percentage of students probably doing hybrid or online virtual learning, even into the future, is probably not met with reality either. So I think, and there are some campuses that have had, and this is public information, have had some enrollment challenges before the pandemic. And so, of course, I think public institutions have an obligation, trustees have an obligation to look at your budgets, to look at your footprint, to look at your expenses, to look at what you do and make the best judgments, the best decisions you can. And that might mean in a campus that might have, over time, 10 or 15 or 20% fewer students. It might mean, and maybe an additional 10 or 15 or 20% more online. It might mean that you're able to reduce that footprint a little bit and provide a more robust virtual atmosphere for students. But I am one who, and I've looked at this quite a bit. I'm one who really believes we should strive as much as we can to keep the social connectedness of education. The one thing hardly any of you have probably ever heard me say that we should be socially distant, provide social distance. Physical distance is one thing, social distance is another. And I worry that we get socially distant, meaning we don't connect with one another. You can do that virtually, but even better in person on our campuses. So the answer really is yes. And by the way, the federal bill that I read until about 1:15 in the morning that might get done this week does include some additional funds, not only for higher education, but also for broadband, for some internet connectivity. How much that will benefit college campuses, or at least certain regions, geographic regions of our state, that will be important for us to learn. So there might be some additional support because we do have, no matter what, we have to do more to help our students, for those who want it and need it, to have that online, virtual, remote capability.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question is about January and spring semester. And in your opinion, should colleges and universities expect additional coordinated guidance from the state with respect to spring semester, for example, whether or not students might have to have a negative test result before they can return to campus, or a specific date around when students can come back to campus?
Well, you're not sorting out the easy questions for me, are you, Mr. Chief of Staff? You know what? Of course, that's on your minds, right? And I don't think anyone has the answer to that. And I'm not trying to put on here, but at 12:30 or so, I'm supposed to be on a call with the governor's state testing team and the governor personally, who wants an update. What I can share right now, though, is what you have done through Thanksgiving and post-Thanksgiving has been just about as significant an effort to be helpful, I believe, as you can be. If you look at our campuses, we've got campuses with positivity rates at 1% or less, 1 or 2 or 3%, where the community around our campuses might be 5, 6, 8, 12, 15%. That tells me that we're doing a lot on our college campuses, the classroom, the on-campus facilities, even in the dorms. I asked the question rhetorically, are we better off with students in off-campus housing, in apartments or other housing, or are we better off with RAs on a dorm, doing temperature checks, doing daily monitoring of students, and basically watching and working with them to be as safe as possible? I think a strong case can be made that we should expect a lot of you, because you are kind of the overseers of a lot of people's young lives, but we also already have seen what you've done. And so the governor does want to do more testing. The capacity is challenging. The costs are significant in some cases. So there will be some higher expectations. I think the governor probably said that there'll be higher expectations, but I think if we share with him all that we're striving to do and willing to do to keep students and faculty and staff safe, I think we've got a chance to make it work even in January. I think I was asking someone this morning, tell me if there's a Thanksgiving surge yet. I want to know right now. I want to know. I want to be able to share with you. We really don't know yet. By the end of this weekend, we'll know what kind of an uptick there might have been because of Thanksgiving. And think about this then. Then we go into Christmas and New Year's, and about 2 weeks after New Year's, then you have what might be the Christmas, New Year's kind of surge, families getting together. But I don't know that this governor or that we will know enough to know how much all needs to be done when we come back in mid or late January. But I know some of you are doing some phasing in. Some of you are doing some additional testing protocols. Some of you have de-densified your campuses at a pretty high cost. Community college has done a great job of doing enhanced, robust remote learning and online virtual learning that has been very helpful for their students. So I think continue to do those things, and we will do our best to keep you posted as to what we learn, how we can be additionally helpful. Some of you have been involved with the Binax antigen test program. We don't know even today whether that's going to be available. We think right now it may not be available in January. So where do we go from there? What's the capacity, even the testing capacity, going forward? We don't unfortunately have those answers yet.
Thank you, Chancellor. Next question is about the transition at the federal level and any predictions you might have about the Biden administration and how that might impact higher education in Ohio going forward.
Okay. Well, even Majority Leader McConnell today, I think, called Joe Biden president-elect, I believe. I think I got that right this morning. So a little more awareness that's the next administration. Well, one thing I've told my community college friends, you've got a first lady who's a community college professor in the White House. Here's what this is one area I have learned that politics is now not my lane. I work for the governor and I work with higher ed leaders, but I think there's a chance that higher education hasn't been a partisan issue. I've not experienced that either in the legislature or as chancellor. Very rarely do we get into that type of an issue. And so the fact that you have a new president and you might have one of the chambers that might be of another party, I don't think that means that higher ed that might not continue to thrive in terms of support. We just haven't seen that on the higher ed side. This debate in Washington in the last, and I follow it pretty closely, they've been fairly close in terms of the amount of support they wanted to provide to higher education. So I'm at least somewhat optimistic that even though there might be some other high-profile battles going on, maybe some partisan ones, I don't necessarily see that much in terms of the higher education space. So I think it's incumbent upon us to strive to find areas of agreement to every chance we can. That's always kind of been my style, and so I'm hopeful that maybe this week we can see how maybe kind of a preview of how some sense of bipartisanship might work in the new year. I'm starting to be a little bit hopeful that at least with higher ed that might happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there things that you want to see more of? Are there things that you want colleges and universities to do more of? This question is saying, we're focused on state priorities, and we're trying to increase degrees and certificates, but are there other things that you would like our colleges and universities to focus on?
Well, I'm gonna answer that one by really not answering that, and here's why. I get this question all the time. What do we need in this state? And some people say we need more master's degrees and professional degrees and doctorates. One of our major companies in the state was considering leaving, and they most needed more doctoral degrees in the sciences, in chemistry and the sciences. That was their main need. Other companies need an upskilling of incumbent workers who may not have a college degree or may need new skills like computer science, what the Lieutenant Governor suggested. We have to do better with our career tech population. We want to do even more in connecting with manufacturers and our career tech educators. We've actually increased Ohio Technical Center support in the last budget and hoping to do so again. So when I talk about education in Ohio, I really believe we are an all of the above state. We need more apprenticeships and trades positions. We need more support for career centers and technical centers, adult care centers. We have 800,000 Ohioans with no high school diploma or equivalency. 800,000. We have a program called Aspire, Vice Chancellor Gary Cates leads, that provides support to get adults to at least that first rung to get that diploma so they can provide for their families. And then I mentioned all the people in Ohio with some college degree or with some college but no degree. And then we get into other things, the associate's degrees, the 2+2 programs, our community colleges partnering with four-year institutions to do 2+2 programs where it matters. The tech cred that I mentioned, that kind of impressive that both our four-year institutions and our community colleges are both at about the same rate participating in tech cred and buying into that program. And then the bachelor's degrees, the professional's master's degrees. Businesses want to go where the talent is, and some of our researchers, we need to be able to have a robust research capacity in this state. If we're going to attract the kind of businesses that are really value added, technology based. So I hate to play to all sides on this, but that's just the way I've always felt. We are not an overeducated state. Our attainment levels have actually gone up. We've done better, but we're still not even the national average on attainment on any academic level. So it's not like we should favor or support one versus another. We should strive to all be pushing to elevate whatever the important needs are, both the families and students, and to the economic future of our state. So, I mean, it almost sounds like that I'm not answering the question, but I really think I am, because we have the need to do all of the above. There's no part of Ohio's economy, and there's no sector in higher education that is not in need of our support and our attention. And I hope that's the way that this administration has been perceived. That's certainly what I've always believed as a senator and now as chancellor. But we've got, here's the thing. I'm hopeful that this conference generates questions and ideas. If you disagree with something, or if something you think I avoided, I didn't share, I didn't do that intentionally. But if you think so, why don't you tell me? And send us a letter, send us an email, put it in the chat. We want to work with you and get stronger and better. One of my favorite things as a senator was to go to a town hall or a meeting and have somebody ask a question or raise an issue, and then in a matter of days or weeks or months, turn that idea into an amendment or a bill and get it to become law. I got several examples. I'm not going to bore you with it, but so if something can come out of this conference where someone elevates an issue or a question and it becomes part of the state budget, I would love to tell that story at next year's trustees conference, where Trustee Phyllis Smith sent me an email and we worked together, and all of a sudden it became part of the state budget bill. How cool would that be? So now I'm going to get 173 amendments to the state budget bill. No, but Shirley, I hope you understand the spirit of me asking that question, because we learn every day. We learn new things every day. I thought I knew a little bit about state government and higher education when I was a state senator, but working with this governor and working with you, working with your presidents, I've learned so much more. And so I want to use this platform today to also learn more from you and take some of your ideas and make Ohio better. Maybe time for one more question, Jim, if we could.
Well, I've only got one question. I saved the best for last. This is a two-part question. It's a hard hitter here at the end. What is your prediction for the Browns' final record? And should our Browns fans go ahead and purchase Super Bowl tickets in advance?
Wow.
And this is an actual question.
Well, I'll tell you what. Now, I am naturally not an optimistic person per se. That's just my life. But this team's got a little defensive work to do, perhaps. I mean, scoring 42 points ought to get you a win. But I think the Browns have. I think if we would have won last night, I think we would have won the division. I'm going to say that straight up. I think we would have won the division if we would have won last night. I'm not sure we can win the division. I'm hopeful at the very least we can win at least one playoff game, get at least 2 deep in the playoffs. That's about as far as I'm going to go. If I've disappointed anybody here.
Randy,
What? Pardon me?
Randy, you have a right to remain silent.
Oh, I do.
Because anything you say can and will be used against you by this group.
All right. Well, wouldn't it be great if I predicted the Browns will win against the Packers in the Super Bowl 20, maybe 27-0, like we did in the NFL championship game in 1964. I was only 6 years old. I wasn't there, but that was the last NFL championship for my Browns, upsetting the Colts and Johnny Unitas in 64. Hey, thanks for that question. I'm hopeful. Wouldn't it be a fabulous start to 21? You just know 21 is going to be a great year if the Browns are in the Super Bowl, right? All kidding aside, everybody. Betty Montgomery just thinks just because she was an auditor, a senator, attorney general, prosecutor, she could just come onto the conference and interrupt the chancellor. It's amazing. It is just an absolute delight to work with you, get to know you and your leadership. Like the governor said, we make mistakes. We don't get everything right, but we are trying every day as hard as we can. And I look forward to continuing to work with you as long as I'm given the privilege to do that. God bless you all. Thanks for being a part of this conference. Hope it was helpful to you. If you're looking for different things in the future, let us know that too. And we'll keep working with you every day, everyone. God bless you all, and thanks a lot. Appreciate you very much. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.